Have you ever noticed something strange? Some of the smartest, kindest people you know are also the most mentally exhausted. Not because they work harder than everyone else, but because their minds never seem to clock out. They replay conversations long after they are over. They imagine problems that have not even happened yet. They lie awake at 2 in the morning. Not because something went wrong, but because their brain keeps asking one question, over and over. What if? Here is the picture. It is 2:17 in the morning. You are exhausted. Tomorrow you have work, but your brain decides tonight is the perfect time to replay a conversation from 3 years ago. A comment someone made, a text you sent that maybe, possibly, sound a little off. 2 hours after you sent it, you are still asking yourself, did that come across wrong? Psychologists have a name for this. They call it rumination, the mind circling back to the same thoughts again and again, especially around uncertainty, past events, or how other people see us. And here is the part that surprises most people. This is not a sign of weakness. It is often the opposite. Studies on rumination have found that people who overthink usually are not anxious because they are fragile. They overthink because their brain is exceptionally good at one thing: pattern recognition. It is always scanning, always processing, always looking for meaning. The problem is not the intelligence. The problem is that the system never gets a signal to stop. Here is why. Even when nothing is happening, an overthinker's brain refuses to clock out. While everyone else relaxes, their mind keeps reviewing, predicting, planning, preparing, as if another problem is always waiting around the corner. But here is the strange part. This pattern almost never starts in adulthood. For most overthinkers, it begins way back in childhood, often in homes where things felt unpredictable, where a parent's mood could shift without warning, or where one small mistake led to a much bigger reaction than it should have. And a child's brain, faced with that kind of world, learns a very logical survival strategy. Think ahead, anticipate everything. Because if you can predict what is coming, maybe, just maybe, you can protect yourself. So overthinking is not a flaw. It is an adaptation, a brilliant nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do. Now here is something worth pausing on. Not all overthinking looks the same. There are really 2 versions of it. The first is the kind where you turn inward to actually understand yourself. Processing your emotions, making sense of a hard day. This kind, when it is balanced, is a real strength. It is tied to deeper self-awareness and stronger emotional intelligence. The second kind is different. It is more passive. You are not moving toward any answer. You are just dwelling, replaying the same worry without ever landing anywhere. This is the version that costs people sleep, costs them decisions, costs them ease in social situations. Because every interaction gets picked apart afterward. Yet this is where most people get it wrong. Almost nobody stays in just one category. Most overthinkers slide between the 2, often without noticing. A quiet moment of reflection can turn into a spiral so gradually you do not feel it happen. And because it feels productive, because your brain is clearly working hard, it is genuinely difficult to notice the moment you crossed from thinking something through to just thinking in circles. Here is the trap underneath all of it. Every time your brain starts solving a problem, even an imagined one, it releases a small hit of dopamine. Just for the act of thinking. Not for finding an answer. Just for trying. So when an overthinker runs through a scenario again, replaying every angle, rehearsing what they should have said, their brain rewards them for the activity itself. It feels like progress. Most of the time, it is not, which is exactly why telling someone to just stop thinking about it almost never works. Their brain has a built-in incentive to keep going. So here is what this all actually says about the people who live like this. Here is the part that might surprise you. Research on rumination has repeatedly found something interesting. People who overthink more also tend to score higher on cognitive empathy. The ability to sense what someone else is thinking or feeling before they say it. These are usually the people who notice when your tone changes, who remember the small thing you mentioned once, weeks ago, who feel the mood shift in a room before anyone says a word. The very same wiring that exhausts them is what makes them so perceptive. And here is the irony nobody talks about. Overthinkers often do not trust their own decisions. They will rewrite a 2-line text message 5 times, but hand them someone else's problem, and suddenly their mind is clear, focused, confident. They give the best advice in the friend group, just never to themselves. Why? Because when it is not their own life on the line, there is nothing to protect. The fear that fuels the spiral simply is not there. But perception without resolution is exhausting. That is the tension overthinkers live inside every day. They notice everything. They feel the weight of every possibility. And yet the more they think, the further clarity seems to drift. Because here is the quiet truth psychology keeps circling back to. The mind cannot think its way out of every problem. Some things are not meant to be solved. They are meant to be felt, decided, or simply let go. So therapists who work with people who overthink chronically usually do not try to stop the thoughts. They try to change the relationship to them. Here is an idea taken from acceptance and commitment therapy. And it is simpler than it sounds. Do not argue with every thought. Just notice it. Instead of saying, "This situation is dangerous. I need to figure it out," try saying, "My brain is generating a concern right now." It sounds like a small shift in wording, but it creates just enough distance to stop a spiral before it fully begins. One version pulls you in. The other lets you watch from a few steps back. Maybe you have spent years believing something was wrong with you. That you cared too much, thought too much, felt too deeply. But maybe your mind was never broken. Maybe it simply learned, a long time ago, that staying alert was the safest way to survive. The goal was never to silence your thoughts completely. It is to remind that mind, gently, that it is finally safe enough to rest. And maybe that is the most human part of all this. We all carry patterns shaped by things we never chose. Understanding them does not erase them, but it does change how much power they have over us. And sometimes, that understanding is exactly where it begins.